So if you take money out of your savings, well, there's not much of a tax there. Take money out of your IRA, 401k, oh, there's a lot of tax there. So most people say, oh, they pick the one that has the least tax until I have to take all these taxable dollars. And then guess what? You go from 10 to 24% bracket and you're wondering how did I end up paying 140% more in taxes? Well, that's because you didn't have advice. Welcome to Wealth Creator Radio, where we help people overcome the uncertainty of having enough retirement income. I'm your host, Eric Heckman, a certified financial planner with over 30 years of experience. We want you to enjoy life and not have to wonder where your money will come from and how long it'll last. My mission is to show you how to develop a personalized income plan so you can retire more and have worry less wealth. Here at Wealth Creator Radio, we cut through the noise and get straight to what matters. We understand that the world of retirement planning can be filled with confusing products, ever-changing tax laws, and volatile markets. That's why we're here to help successful people like you navigate the uncertainty and create a blueprint for a thriving, work-optional life.
Hi, welcome to our show where we talk about retirement planning. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Eric Heckman. He is president of Heckman Financial right here in Silicon Valley, and he is a certified financial planner. So he's been helping people like you have remarkable retirements for over 30 years now. And it's his mission to help you plan for that lifetime income that you're going to need in retirement. Enough money to help you weather most any economic storm. So you can transform your retirement worries to confidence, and it's his goal to help people retire. 1,001 people retire by 2031. Our phone number, 800-454-1184. You may call or text the word visit to that number. Remember to get the digital toolbox. You're going to hear Eric talk about it today. It includes Eric's book that he's written and other informative resources about retirement that you're going to want to have. And remember, our podcast comes out every Tuesday morning, so you can always listen for that in case you miss part of this show. Just search for Wealth Creator Radio. And Eric, so good to be here with you again. We're going to talk about really the retirement questions you're getting all the time, right?
Yeah, no, certainly. There's always a few questions that most people have that are most common. Everybody, of course, needs to get a little bit more specific for their situation, right? So that's why we have people meet with us and talk with us. But yeah, we're going to at least hit the top ones that you hear most often. Yeah,
every once in a while we do a top 5 list, and this week it's the top 5 retirement questions. So we experienced years of low interest rates. Mortgage rates finally have started to take off. Bank rate says we're at about 7.09% for a 30-year mortgage rate, and that's prompting a lot of new questions. People are wondering, whether or not they should take out a mortgage in retirement. So that's my first top 5 question to you, Eric. Should I get that dream retirement home in retirement?
Well, it depends on where you're getting it from, right? So, if you're sticking around the Bay Area, that probably doesn't usually make sense to do that. Just put a bunch more money into the house, and usually most people are doing the opposite direction, right? Where they're trying to downsize, and it might be the dream house or dream location. Now, I do have a few clients that are buying that dream second home, and I've got one in particular that's buying one down in Monterey area, and it's a lot of money to remodel and redo, and so you have to kind of balance that along with the does this make sense type of thing, right? Yeah, you get the dream spot, but you don't want to blow your entire nest egg on that either. So lots of times I have probably more of my clients by far downsizing and going to a house where they can pay off the mortgage, not have a mortgage. Sell the house here and then move someplace else cheaper, which is pretty much everywhere. And so, but if you need a mortgage, then sometimes you do. But ideally, if you get that old mortgage, it's in the 2s or 3s. Yeah, it's better to try to stick with that. But one danger I've seen a lot too is people doing those home equity line of credits, and those things have shot up a lot, and people aren't paying attention how high that interest is now.
I know.
So yeah, you definitely have to watch out.
So this kind of brings me to the next question. Another top 5 question people have: should I pay off my mortgage before I retire? My husband asks that all the time. He's constantly thinking about that. What are some factors we need to consider in making that decision?
Well, there's always emotional and there's financial, and emotional tends to win. So emotional says, I just want this house paid off, or grandpa told me, or, my aunt told me, or somebody, it's usually something like that. But really financially wise, yeah, if you're getting that new 7%, 6 or 7% mortgage, yeah, you should probably pay that off. But if you got one of those 2 or 3% mortgages and you can put money in a, guaranteed account right now for 5% for 5 years, why would why would you give up that higher earnings to put money into something that basically doesn't earn, right? Because
Yeah.
your house goes up and down in value regardless of your mortgage. So you putting money against the mortgage doesn't make your house more valuable. It gives you more equity, but it doesn't increase the price of the house. So yeah, if you can put that money and earn, that 5% while you're paying 3, that's what wealthy people do. It's called leverage, using, borrowing money at cheaper rates and investing it higher. So yeah, I would not pay off that if you can help it.
Okay.
Emotionally.
Okay, cool. Another top 5 question, and how much should I have saved at my age? Now, we don't know what that age is, but I know you get that question a lot, right? How much should I have saved before I retire? Things like that.
Yeah, or what's the dollar amount is the
Yeah,
other
there
big
you go.
one and
Yeah,
stuff. And,
right.
that all goes back to having a plan. You need to have that income plan because it really depends on how much you're spending. I mean, and what the real number is, not the lie that we all tell ourselves of what we spend. so if you take your last 12 months bank statements, divide by 12, that's what you paid for. If you're paying off your credit card every month with that bank account, you don't need to look at your credit card, just look at the bank account. And that's really how much money you took out. And if that number's, 5,000 or 8,000 or 10, whatever that number is, okay, how much money do I need to have put away minus, any steady income stuff like Social Security? How much do I need to what's that, that difference? And so if you're getting, say, 3,000 from Social Security, but you need to get 8,000 a month, well, you need 5,000 a month to live on. Well, that's like 60,000 a year. Well, if you got 100,000 at, say, $1 million at 5%, that's only 50. So then the easier math would be you need a little bit more than that, right? So, so it really depends on your spending, and that's where we do some planning. That's where we like to do a lot of, go through the 5 areas that everybody needs to have a plan for, which is the income, investments, taxes, healthcare, and legacy. And one of the things that we do here at Heckman Financial is we really like to have a lot of educational materials so people really kind of understand what things are going on. And so we've got a couple things like, will my money last as long as I do? Am I paying too much money in taxes? Even a copy of my book, Worry Less Wealth, and an opportunity to set a time to meet with me. All you got to do is to get the access to that whole digital toolbox is by texting the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
And you're listening to Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman of Heckman Financial right here in the Silicon Valley area. We're going over our top 5 retirement questions today. Here's another one for you, Eric. Whenever we see a lot of volatility, people tend to wonder, ooh, should I be putting my money somewhere else? Okay. So this next question is, if I'm worried about my 401k balance, should I stop contributions to it and do something else with that money? Maybe put it in the bank or pay down debt?
Well, one of the big things is to start decreasing the risk level, but lots of times, a lot of people just go to do those target date funds where then they flip you from having more in stocks and more to bonds. And bonds historically don't do that much of a return. I remember I was just meeting with somebody recently, and the 1-year return on their bond fund was 6%, but the 5-year was 3% and the 10-year was 1%. That's okay. It had an okay year last year, but the rest of the years were pretty bad. And so there are a lot of guaranteed options out there. Some ones that with insurance companies that you can have some guaranteed growth in terms of you don't lose the money, but when the money goes up, you get those earnings. And I think that's a great way to do it, is to decrease your risk by using something like that. If you're over 59 and a half, most 401ks even let you roll that money to an IRA, or if you've got older IRAs from older companies that you worked with, you can use that money. And so, I would definitely start decreasing the risk for sure.
Okay. And I want to ask you this. Are there other questions that you are hearing a lot right now, Eric?
Those are kind of the main ones. I mean, probably the biggest one that we didn't really touch on, though, is taxes.
There you go.
And taxes are, I find taxes are the most, the number one thing that people pay in retirement. That is the biggest cost item, is taxes. People don't think about that, but it really is true, because they've got all this pre-tax money, right? 401ks, IRAs that you never paid tax on. And guess what? It's time for the pay the bill. So I've got a lot of clients that are in their 70s that are in their highest tax bracket ever without working because they're having to take so much money out and pay so much tax. So yeah, really having a tax plan is really critical now. So, again, if you want to get a lot of that data, am I paying too much in taxes in retirement? It's one of the downloads. So if you want to get access to that, a copy of my book, Worry Less Wealth, or have a chance to talk with me, Eric Heckman, all you got to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
If something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. There's a particular time of life this phrase couldn't be more appropriate. How can you know you'll live the retirement you've always imagined? After all, life can be so unpredictable. You've worked hard and saved. Watch your accounts go up and down with the market. Your advisor says, don't worry, you'll be fine. But you still don't feel confident. Eric Heckman at Heckman Financial has a checklist to help you find out if you're on the right track for retirement. If you can check all the boxes with confidence, you may be ready for retirement. If not, Eric can help you address any potential costly mistakes. To get Eric Heckman at Heckman Financial's complimentary checklist, call or text LIST to 800-454-1184. Call or text LIST to 800-454-1184. Firm offers insurance services. Investment advisory services offered through Heckman Financial and Insurance Services, Inc. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Eric Heckman. When we think about risks to retirement, it's natural to focus on the big dramatic market downturns, right? Like those we've seen in the past and we're going to see in the future, of course. But those are not the only threats. The looming possibility of higher taxes, persistent inflation, and other challenges all contribute to the very real fear of outliving our savings. So, Eric, with so many risks coming from every direction, tell us how retirees can stay ahead of these challenges.
Yeah, well, there's some stuff you can't, really do anything about, right? Inflation's not something that you can control or, get a say-so in. So it's just a matter of making sure you account for it. So in your planning, make sure that that money is going up over time. You would not want to, if you're working right now, you would not want to be making what you made 20 years ago, most likely. And same thing in retirement. You don't want to be 20 years into retirement and making the same thing you were 20 years earlier because, just won't be as good, right? And so that's one of the things that you have to do. The other one is just really having an income plan. The income plan is really the key because once you look at that income plan, you can say, okay, well, which bucket of money should I take money out of first? Like I've got a client who's about to retire here in April, and he's pretty high up guy at Apple. And so he's been making lots of good money for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But in next year, he won't be on Social Security. He won't be getting the big stock options or anything like that anymore. So, his income probably won't be low, but his income will be lower. And so, now we can do some other stuff, some tax planning. But as we go along, once you have Social Security coming in, then you get more income. And then, of course, when you're having to take money out of your retirement accounts, even if you don't need it, then you even have more income. So, you got to plan for when those income time periods are lower and grab some of that and pay some taxes then, right? When it's low. But most people will do the exact opposite. They'll say, oh, no, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait till later, let it defer, and ouch.
Right. Yeah. So taxes, they're a huge concern for people. And then, you look at our national debt, where we are now. What is it now, Eric? 37 trillion or so? So,
yeah, right around there.
Yeah. So we know it's going to affect us somehow. I mean, taxes are going to have to go up, I would think.
Well, yeah. I mean, that you can kind of try to pretend in some sort of a Pollyannish world that you can just cut costs to the point where, there's somehow you're not going to spend any money, but that's not how the federal system's set up. I mean, more than the entire economy, the amount that that we get from all the taxes, all the revenue. So think of it as if this was you and your household income, meaning for the country, isn't even enough to cover the interest on the debt, Social Security, Medicare.
Oh my.
So the cost of the government's on top of all that. so
Right.
that's like saying your spendings, you're doing all the spending, but your mortgage is on top of that. Well, that's not good, right? You're going to be going backwards. So, that's one thing that anytime you hear any politician trying to either preserve tax cuts or give you more tax cuts, that they're cutting income, they're lowering their revenue, and then that means that they're putting it on that credit card, the national debt credit card.
Mm-hmm.
And history shows us throughout civilizations that once countries get a lot of debt and stuff, that's what makes them crumble. That's what can really cause issues. So that's one thing to be worried about, because of taxes cannot go down. Realistically, we have to we have to at some point pay the bills, and whether or not that's a small thing or something sudden where nobody wants to buy our debt anymore, and it gets to be a huge issue. So that's why you really want to have a plan. You want to know, okay, how can I lower my taxes today? How can I lower my taxes? Really should be the bigger question. Should be, how do I lower them over my lifetime? And that's the question people don't ask enough. And so when we're meeting with people and we're talking to people and we're helping them with that income plan, we go through that blueprint to worry less wealth, where we figure out, where's that income going to come from? Will it last for the rest of their life? Hopefully, yes. And then beyond that, how is that money invested? Is it going to be able to put off that income? What are the tax ramifications? So income, investments, taxes, all very interdependent. And then healthcare issues. Who gets your money? Legacy issues when you're gone. Those are the 5 areas that you have to have a plan for. And that's what we do in the blueprint to worry less wealth, and something we can help you with. And so what we've done is we've actually set up a lot of educational materials for people for, just a quick read. So you can read about a 10-page thing about making sure your money lasts as long as you do, the Social Security timing decisions. Are you paying too much taxes in retirement? All these really critical things to know about. You can have a copy of my book, Worry Less Wealth, and even set up a time to talk with me, Eric Heckman. So all you got to do, super easy, just text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. You are listening to Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman of Heckman Financial. And so we're talking today about, tackling the threats of taxes and inflation, among other things, in our retirement. Let's talk about steps that retirees can actually take right now to prepare for future tax increases. What are you helping your retirees with?
Well, one of the big ones is doing Roth conversions. So what does that mean? A lot of times people don't fully get that. That's when you're choosing to pay taxes even though you don't have to. Ouch, right? Nobody wants to do that.
Right.
And so why would somebody be crazy enough to do that? Well, if you're in a lower bracket now and you can pay that tax today, we're not talking $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 Roth conversions. We're talking 20 to 50. We're talking smaller dollar numbers. So you pay the taxes today. Not only does that now get rid of the tax for the rest of your life, but all the tax on the growth is gone for the rest of your life too. So that can be a huge amount of money depending on when you're doing it, how early you're doing it. And what we find is that it really, really makes a huge difference in somebody's lifetime income, how they're getting that money. The other thing too is making your other money tax efficient. And so this is something that I find a lot of people also don't pay attention to. And what I'm talking about there is like I had some clients that had inherited some money, and so they left a lot of it in CDs and bank accounts. And, it was from dad, and they didn't want to take a lot of risk with it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, when we were looking at how much taxes that was causing them, and this is not money they're using, this is not money they need, it's just sitting in the bank, literally. So, but it was causing them to jump up into the next tax bracket even. And so if you can make that money also more tax efficient with your taxable dollars, then you're going to pay a lot less in tax. So again, most people, most financial advisors, they say, oh, well, we don't do tax advice. And then talk to the tax person, well, we don't do financial advice. And so nobody's getting this advice. So it's really awful. So yes, taxes have to be a key component of your planning.
So one of the things that is kind of nerve-wracking is that Congress could change the rules at any time, right? So we've got to plan for higher taxes. But that kind of feels like, we have no idea what to expect. So how are you helping your clients prepare for future taxation when it's unpredictable?
Yeah, no, definitely a good question. And, it's something where it's like you're playing Monopoly and then all of a sudden you're not supposed to buy this place or you can buy this place or,
Yeah.
all of a sudden the stack of cards are different. And how do you keep playing this game if the rules keep changing? But just be used to it, right? It's just going to be always the case. So really what we do with people is just making sure that they can have as much money as tax efficient. So doing stuff with Roth, doing stuff with especially design life insurance, other things that can be tax-free, even just making things more tax efficient. So it's really just focusing on that and knowing that every 3 to 5 years, the rules of the game are going to change and we're going to have to get back together and figure that out. But, again, that's why we have stuff like, are you paying too much in taxes in retirement set up in the digital toolbox? So if you want to grab a copy of that, all you have to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
Be sure to like and subscribe to Wealth Creator Radio so you can stay up to date on ways to build your wealth and create a retirement you and your family will enjoy for years to come. Like and subscribe today and create your wealth for tomorrow with Wealth Creator Radio.
Hi, I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Eric Heckman, president of Heckman Financial right here in Silicon Valley. In 2022, inflation soared to a 9.1%. That was the highest level since 1981. It hit everybody hard. But for retirees, it's more than just a pinch. It can threaten their financial confidence. So I want to get into inflation right now, Eric, and let's talk about why it poses such a uniquely significant problem for retirees.
Well, really, when you're working, hopefully you get raises,
Yeah.
right? And if you're on Social Security, you did get a big raise after that, after 2022, right, with that huge increase. But then of course Medicare rate went up, groceries went up, all these other things go up, right? So that's one of the tough things is if you have a static income and all these things are going up and get more expensive, then you're staying even while everything else is going up past you. And that's not a trajectory you want to be on for a long period of time, right? So you need to have that planned into your financial plan of having that money, get bigger, have it, increase it a little bit each year, and just know it's going to happen. There's going to be always little spikes. I mean, that one was all pretty much because of COVID. The government, the Fed printed a ton of money and to get us all out of that downturn, and that worked, except for anytime they do that causes inflation. It was kind of like we knew that would happen.
I know, yeah.
So that's one of the things that you have to do is just really make sure that's part of your plan.
Can you give us some specific strategies that retirees could use for inflation?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, if you get Social Security, you do get a little bit of a increase there. If you're lucky enough to have a regular pension, most of those don't go up, but there's not many of those left, right? So unless you're a government employee, and then those do go up with inflation. So the other part can really be is just making sure you have some other guaranteed lifetime income. So you want to have some money that you can basically, with insurance companies nowadays, in essence, create your own pension. And if you have something like that where you've got some guaranteed money coming in, then you can use things like dividends, stock growth, hopefully, other things that you can use to offset those costs. But if you don't have a good base of income and then you're having to cash in more stuff, that can be not a good thing long term, right? Because then you're cashing in that principal, and that can eat up your money faster. So having it be part of your plan and having, like for us, we always have some money in foundational money, some stuff that's guaranteed. So that way you always have that money there, no matter what the markets are like, what the economic conditions are like, you've got some money that you can take out. Obviously, you have the market money, but in between, we always have about 10 to 20% steady income. And this is stuff that pays good dividends. It's got low volatility. And again, that's why you want to have that there, is because if things get more expensive and you got cash flow coming in, it makes life a lot easier.
Definitely a lot easier. So taxes, inflation, managing investments, making sure you don't outlive your savings. That's a lot to handle. And I always think, man, that'd be so hard to handle by yourself. So it's obvious that finding that right financial professional is critical. And that is something, that we talk about on our show, that this is what you do. You focus on retirees. What should people be looking for when they're trying to find someone to guide them through all these complexities?
Yeah, well, I see a lot of people turning to software programs, websites, and I mean, most of all the major brokerage houses have some, some site that says, "Oh, what's your money going to do?" But it's very, very basic kind of math, and it's not rooted in reality, unfortunately. So, life isn't so linear that those little programs can work, and I don't think AI is going to be able to handle this quite yet, and because there's a lot of nuanced, types of things in there. So, I would say the first thing, anytime somebody's looking for a financial advisor, well, first of all, do you need one? And if you've never retired before, which most people haven't, so
That's true.
I would say it would be good to not to mess it up and to have some help there. At least talk to somebody, because I always love the phrase, "You don't know what you don't know," and until somebody tells you, right? Until you know it. So you may not even know what you're missing or what you're not even paying attention to. Little things like too much income can cause your Medicare premiums to go up. Rarely ever find anybody who knows about that, except for the people who got hit with it after the fact.
Yeah.
So they didn't know about it beforehand, typically. And then the other thing too is what type of advisor is that? Is that somebody who works with everybody? Because, if they're working with 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds and you're in your 60s going to retire, very, very different type of, approach for those age timeframes, right? So, really, like for us, we only work with pretty much people doing that shift from working life to retirement, usually late 50s, early 60s is when we have our clients, start working with us. But the other critical thing is when you go to retire, you can pick your tax bracket. Sounds weird, I know. How do you pick your tax? Can't I just pick the lowest one? But you pick the tax bracket by which buckets of money you take money out of. So if you take money out of your savings, well, there's not much of a tax there. Take money out of your IRA, 401k, oh, there's a lot of tax there. So most people say, oh, they pick the one that has the least tax, until I have to take all these taxable dollars. And then guess what? You go from 10 to 24% bracket, and you're wondering, how did I end up paying 140% more in taxes? Well, that's because you didn't have advice. And so that's why we're here, really, is to help people, formulate that plan, not just investments, but taxes all intermingled together, because taxes, income, and investments, you cannot separate those three. And then, healthcare issues, if you're trying to retire pre-65, how are you going to pay for it? Post-65, what are the rules there? And then, of course, long-term care, and then who gets your stuff, legacy issues. So one of the great things we've set up is this digital toolbox. It's a really great resource where it's got a lot of different things like how to empower women investors, Social Security timing decisions, how to make your money last as long as you do, and are you paying too much money in tax in retirement? It's also got a digital copy of my book, Worry Less Wealth. And you can set a time and talk with me, Eric Heckman. So all you got to do is super easy. Text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
And you are listening to Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer. So we've been talking about how inflation and taxes can erode retirement savings. But they can be easily overlooked, I think, when you're planning for retirement. So, Eric, tell us how you actually address these specific risks with your clients to help preserve their financial future. Walk us through that.
Yeah. So, one thing we already talked about, I think, was, just making sure that income keeps going up.
Right.
You don't want to retire what you made 20 years ago and, and keep it the same number. You want to still be able to go off, have fun, because hey, you got 7 days a weekend, not 2 anymore.
That's
right. So that'd be one thing. And then, really look at tax efficient strategies for your regular dollars. So I'm talking about, non-IRA stuff. So your brokerage account, your bank savings accounts, how can we make those less taxable and, stretch those dollars even longer? And, of course, taxes is a risk that you're going to always have if they go up. So if we can make some of that money tax-free for the rest of your life, it's going to even help even beyond. So yeah, you got to have that part of the plan.
So, Eric, this type of planning is something that you could offer our listeners as well, right?
No, exactly. So yeah, if you're somebody who's, in their 50s, 60s, trying to figure out, even your 70s, if you're already retired, you're trying to figure out how to make this all work, how to lower your taxes, how do you make sure that money lasts for the rest of your life. Yeah, all you have to do is, you can set up a time to meet with us, and in our digital toolbox, or just get a lot of that great information and then, talk to us after that. But all you have to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
Imagine for a moment that an intense storm is pounding your house. Will the roof leak? Will the siding peel away? Will your basement flood? If your house is properly built and maintained, you'll be fine. But what about your 401k or your investments? The stock market has had a great run the last few years, but is its current turmoil making you feel uneasy? Are you confident your portfolio is built to weather the financial storm? Now may be a great time to have your retirement plan inspected. Call Eric Heckman of Heckman Financial at 800-454-1184 now. Eric will examine your portfolio and show you if your investments are in need of some weatherproofing. Call Eric Heckman of Heckman Financial today at 800-454-1184. That's 800-454-1184. Investment advisory services offered through Heckman Financial Insurance Services, Inc., a registered investment advisor.
Hi, I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Eric Heckman, president of Heckman Financial right here in the Silicon Valley area. There are some words that can stand the test of time, and we're going to go through some timeless advice right now for you to keep in mind for retirement. So here's how it's going to go, Eric. I'm going to give you a quote, and then I want you to talk about what that has to do with retirement planning, okay?
Sounds great.
Okay, here we go. First one is Benjamin Franklin. And oh my gosh, he has so many quotes because he did so much, okay? Here's a good quote from him. Beware of little expenses. A small leak will sink a great ship. So that sounds like something we need to think about. Those little expenses that could cause unexpected issues in retirement, right?
Well, not just in retirement. I mean, just all the time, right?
Life.
And, right now, of course, when the subscription model kind of first came out for software and other things, it was amazing how much more profitable a lot of these companies got, because, now you don't pay for it once, you pay for a tiny bit every single month, right? And same with streaming services, and same with, so many different things. So another term I like is dripping nickels. That's the other good one. And so, one of the things to look at is, just sit down and look at, your credit card bills and your bank accounts. Are there things you're paying for that you're barely using or not using at all? Even worse, right? So those are things where if you can kind of go through there and start cutting out some of those expenses, it's amazing. Sometimes people can save, $100, $500, even $1,000 on stuff that they're not really using or needing. And so, that's one of those things that, again, that's 100% return on your money, right? If you stop spending it. It's a very good way to make some money by just stop spending it and on things that you don't need.
Right. All right, very good. We're going over some timeless advice. I'm giving Eric some quotes, and he's telling us what it has to do with retirement. This next one is from somebody we all know about, Abraham Lincoln. And he said a lot of things too, but here's one. He said, "You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today."
That's definitely a good one. He did have a great way with words. And so, I mean, it is very true that I would probably say, if they're all being honest, I'd say it'd probably be 100, but I'd say at least 70% of my clients always regret not starting earlier, not doing something, sooner, right? Why didn't I put more money away when I was in my 20s or 30s, and, things like that, right? And so why did we not do that? Well, because we were exactly what he was saying.
Procrastinators.
We were trying to escape the responsibility tomorrow, right? By evading it today. So, it is one of those things where if you can just start putting a little bit away, it's amazing the amount of time that compounding does, and how that's on your side if you start early. If it's late, you can still do it. It just means you need to put more away, and maybe you cut back more now to make sure it's all good later on. But you definitely need to have a focus on tomorrow always, even today.
So true. My husband and I both wish we would have, back in our 30s and 40s, saved more, because now we're regretting, we regret it. And man, that would have been helpful. So we're working really hard now to save though, Eric, and we've downsized and saving as much as we can. And we were out of debt and all that. So believe me, if you do it earlier, you won't have to, kind of scramble at the end like Bobby and I are doing. But all right, here's another quote from, actually, I would say this is a pretty heavy hitter in the financial world, Warren Buffett. And he says, I never attempt to make money on the stock market. I buy on the assumption that they could close the market the next day and not reopen it for 10 years. So tell us about that.
Yeah, that one's a little funky, huh? I mean, I don't think they would close it for 10 years.
I don't think so.
But yeah, I mean, in essence, what he's saying is he's trying to put money in there for long term, for owning whatever company. Right now, oh my gosh, with all the meme stocks and all the, FOMO and get rich quick kind of attitudes that you see out there, so many people, unfortunately, are just trying to jump on whatever the hottest new stock is and make a ton of money. And they may do that once or twice, but the problem is the other 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 times they didn't do it, offset what they made on those 1 or 2 times. Right. and so that, that's one of the things that you have to watch out for. I mean, you need to have that long-term focus. You need to make sure that, that this money's going to last you for the rest of your life. And, there's, also on the flip side of that, you also can't just jump back in and out. I mean, that's one of the worst things that I see where, people that, in 2022, because the market was down, they said, and they get out. And then, of course, the end of 23, it was back to where it was at the end of 21. So, those kind of things where you have these dips and back up, if you overreact to those too, then, that's going to be a problem. So, one of the things I think is anytime you're doing anything, if you have a plan to go back on, you're assembling that IKEA furniture or whatever it is, right? And all of a sudden you see some extra bolts, you can go back in the directions and make sure you didn't skip a step, right? You can make sure that you did it all right. So when you have a plan, it's easy to know, okay, should I freak out, or are these just actually extra bolts, right?
Right.
Or did I forget something and it's going to fall over the second I put it up? So you need to know that information. It's really critical for you. So, that's what we do with our clients. It's like, okay, am I going to be okay? Am I going to make sure this money's going to last me the rest of my life? What about inflation? What about, risk? What happens when there's a down market? Because basically every 10 years, there's going to be probably 1 to 3 down markets, and you're going to hit those in retirement. So where do you get the money that year for to live on and such? If you've got, if you got a good plan where you've got foundational and steady income and market funds, you've got a plan for that. If you've got that blueprint to worry less wealth, where it talks about your income plan, your investment plan, your tax plan, healthcare and legacy plan. Once you have those 5 areas taken care of, you also know you got a plan to fall back on. So, I think that's one of the things that you have to have always your eye on to make sure that you're on track and on target. And so, one of the things that you can do is if you wanted to get a little bit more information, set up a time to talk, 15 to 30 minutes with me, Eric Heckman, and no cost, no obligation, or you just want to get a copy of my book, Worry Less Wealth. If you want to get some of our quick reads, we've got these 10 to 15 page papers on Social Security decision. Will my money last as long as I do? Items like that. All you got to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download it directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
Yeah. And on wealthcreatorradio.com, they have, like Eric already said, there's some free reports there. But, you want some more advice? Eric's giving you, advice today. There's a lot of articles on things that you might, have questions about. What if you do need long-term care, or those Social Security decisions, or empower women investors, just all kinds of things. Head to wealthcreatorradio.com for even more. Eric and his team are here here to guide you about retirement. In fact, Eric's been doing this for, 30 plus years. So that is his passion, to help retirees have a remarkable retirement. And you're listening to Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman. Thank you so much. So, Eric, here's our final quote, maybe from someone who's far less famous. This is a financial author, and his name is Jonathan Clements. He says, retirement is like a long vacation in Vegas. The goal is to enjoy it to the fullest, but not so fully that you run out of money. And tell us how true that is.
Yeah, well, no, definitely. I mean, it should be a lot like a vacation, but you don't want to be, I think it's almost more expensive going to Disney nowadays than it is Vegas. But, some of these places, when you're on these trips or these resort areas, right, everything's so pricey. You don't want to be spending that kind of stuff every day, for, the rest of your life, right? So you gotta have a little bit both ways, right? Have those fun trips, have those things, but have that in a fun fund. Have a fund set aside where you've got that money to do those things, and make sure you're doing the things that you want to do, getting out there, having some fun, seeing friends, seeing family, going to all those bucket list places, but do it within a plan. So once year by year, my clients come back to us and they say, "Oh, how am I doing? Are we on track?" And I mean, one of the nicest ones I just recently had was I had a client that we went over, how she's been doing, and she's like, "Is this about right?" I mean, I looked back from some of our reports from, I think it was about 8 years or 9 years earlier, and she's averaged only about 10,000 drop in all those years of her assets.
Oh, wow.
Even though she's been living off of them and taking income and so forth out of that. So, I said, you're good. She's like, well, I'm always worried about that Costco shopping cart. Do I need to take it home with me or not? And I'm like, nope, you're fine. So, again, that's why we put all these tools up and all these great resources up at our digital toolbox. There's a lot of great stuff in there. You can set a time to talk, get a copy of my book or some of those reports. All you have to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download it directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
Thinking about healthcare costs, long-term care expenses, and income needs in retirement? How will you afford it all? And what can you do now to help ensure your loved ones will be okay when you're gone? Eric Heckman at Heckman Financial has access to tools and strategies that can help you pursue your retirement dreams without taking on too much risk with your money. Interest rates are the highest they've been in decades, so take advantage of this seemingly once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to help protect your retirement before it's gone. Learn about the tools and features available today that could provide bonuses, potentially adding up to tens of thousands of dollars in additional income when medical needs arise. Schedule your visit with Eric Heckman at Heckman Financial today by calling 800-454-1184. That's 800-454-1184. These opportunities won't last forever, so call now to help protect your future. 800-454-1184.
Hey, thanks for spending part of your day with us. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Eric Heckman, and we've come to the time in our show when Eric's going to give us a wealth success story, and I always love this, Eric, because it's a time when you share a story, kind of a lesson for all of us to see, a really good example how things work out for the best for retirees that you've worked with. So what do you have for us today?
Well, I guess I wanted to focus a little bit more on the farther downside of a longer road of retirement.
Oh yeah, later. Okay.
Well, just because what happens is if you're married at some point, unfortunately, one of you will pass away, and what I've found there is the ones who have taken the time to really make sure that they had somebody there, because most couples, there's one person who knows money, one person who doesn't. And not always, but right. Quite often.
Yeah.
And when that person who knows all the money stuff passes away, it can be, brutally hard. We had one client who had just never even used an ATM. This was just a few years ago. This was not like, I'm not talking about in the 90s or 2000s. This is in the 2020s, because her husband had just always gotten her money out and stuff like that. And all of a sudden now she's having to pay attention to this stuff. And, one of the nice things, I've got a client that unfortunately is been diagnosed that he won't be here for much longer and stuff. And so he's really taking the time to make sure his wife knows what's going on, help me, have me start managing more of his funds. We did some, but he'd like to do a lot of his other stuff. So now he's having us kind of, work with him on that. And, and I've had this more than once, happened where, we've had some people where, somebody passes away, but some of them have been very well organized and knew about this, or at least got some education. The ones that kind of started talking before they passed away, obviously that's nicer if you know it might be imminent, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't always necessarily know when that's going to happen. And so just, I find it's, especially anytime you're in a relationship, you need to have, you don't have to necessarily run the stuff, but you at least have to know where all the stuff is. And even if you're single, the other thing too is, does your friend or, whoever else is going to inherit your stuff, do they even know where all these things are? Do they know stuff about it? And the ones that had success in the end were the ones that, talked about this stuff, brought this stuff up, did stuff like hiring me or talking to me to help them, know, that other person, where everything's at. And, I've even had some clients introduce me to their grown children, so that way they know who to talk to and, what kind of things. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of an overlooked area of that's, especially for guys, right? We're like, oh, we're just going to always take care of it. Well, then when you're gone and oops.
Then what?
Right. And, so I think that's one of the biggest things that people should be really thinking about when they're talking about legacy and other stuff is, okay, how's this going to all play out when I'm gone? Because it can be very, settling somebody's estate can be a mess if it's in order. If it's already a mess, it's even a larger mess. Thank you for tuning in to Wealth Creator Radio. I'm Eric Heckman, and it's been a pleasure guiding you towards a more confident and secure retirement. Remember, my responsibility is to always do what's right for you, our client. Together, we can cut out that fancy-sounding financial jargon that doesn't help and focus on what truly matters for your financial future. If you're ready to take control of your retirement planning and build a personalized income plan, contact us at 800-454-1184 and text the word Toolbox to schedule a complimentary consultation. If you're looking for more resources and tools to build your retirement future, don't forget to check out that Wealth Creator Toolbox, your toolkit for a secure and confident retirement journey. Until next time, retire more and worry less with Wealth Creator Radio.
Information provided during Wealth Creator Radio is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Individuals should thoroughly review the contract for specific details of the product features and costs. Income payments and withdrawals from deferred annuities are generally taxable as ordinary income in the year they are taken. Eric Heckman offers investment advisory services through Heckman Financial and Insurance Services, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Any tax advice given as part of this presentation is not intended to be used and cannot be used by the taxpayer for the purpose of avoiding tax penalties or promoting, marketing, or recommending to another party any matter or transaction addressed herein. The views and opinions expressed in the program are not necessarily those of the radio station or its sponsors, and they should not construe as legal, tax, or investment advice. You should always consult the appropriate advisor before making any financial decision.